Welcome, everyone. Come on in. We're going to give it just a second. We've got 70 some people registered, so I'm going to give it just a second for everybody to check in. But in the meantime, go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat with your name and your organization and anything else you'd like to share, including your land acknowledgement. We are going to ask as we go through today that you please put questions into the Q&A and introductions, that kind of thing, into the chat. Also, if you're having any problem technologically, you can put that into the chat. But all questions can go into the Q&A, and we will go. Beatrice will be answering them live as we go. All right, let's go ahead. I always like to reward those who are on time as opposed to punishing them. Got to reinforce that good behavior. Sophie, let's go to the next slide. Let's dive in here. Okay, as I said, introduce yourself in the chat. The other thing to know is the webinar is being recorded. The recording, the slide deck, other resources that are shared, you will get an email either by the end of the day or first thing in the morning with all of those resources. So don't feel like you have to be taking exact dictation. Everything will be, you'll get a bundle of fun resources afterwards. So you can listen and learn today. Next. Introduce the team, which is the part where I always remember I have no manners and forget to introduce myself. So let's start with, my name is Terry Ball. I am the Senior Programs Manager for Californians for the Arts. We have some other members of our team here today from the Performing Arts Equitable Payroll Fund team. Beatrice Casagran will be covering the Q&A. Go ahead and you can start now or wait for later for your questions. She'll be working on the Q&A throughout. If something's, she will also stop me 2 or 3 times during so we can cover questions as they come in. If something is suddenly kind of blowing up in the Q&A, she will also stop me at that point, just so you can stop listening to me natter on for a bit. Also on our team today, and in Beatrice's other life, besides helping out with this program, Beatrice runs Ophelia's Jump in Upland in the greater Los Angeles area. We have a team here of people from within the industry to help us out with this program. Manning the chat today is Martha Dimson, who is also affiliated with TIPSCA, the Theater Producers of Southern California, and Open Fist in Los Angeles. And she will be manning the chat, putting links in, and also reminding you if you forget and put a question into the Q&A, she will remind you and ask you to move it over to the Q&A. Sorry, I sometimes get distracted by the names in the chat. I have to learn not to look. So the final member of our team that is here with us today is Sophie Lynn, who is recording and manning the slide deck and taking care of all things technical. Sophie's affiliation with theater in her other life is that Sophie is an incredibly talented young lighting designer. So our slide here is Californians for the Arts and Californian Arts Advocates. These are our 2 sister organizations. They are separate nonprofits. Californians for the Arts is your statewide advocacy service organization that is here to advocate and for programs like this and to help you know how to navigate them. California's Arts Advocates is the comprehensive lobbying firm. So CFTA is more the grassroots portion of the advocacy, and CAA is the grass tops, working directly with legislators. Next. Questions are always welcome if we have talked about, and we will break periodically as we go through, so to cover questions. Next. There is a links document that Martha will put into the chat. What we've tried to do is all of the links we'll be sharing with you here today. We've put together into one document. So you don't have to be copying and pasting madly throughout. All of the resources that you need will be in this one document. There is also at the end of that document some Zoom tips. Um, this document will also be in the follow-up email. Next. So, oh, and somehow we've gotten some of the Spanish pages in here. Not a problem. Our last webinar was interpreted in Spanish. And so we have some extra instructions here in case you wanted to listen in Spanish. As you know, you can turn on the closed captioning at the bottom if it helps you to watch that as you're listening. So those are the instructions here. Next. You also can set your Zoom screen up for however works best for you. That doesn't impact everyone else. That just is there for you. And there are some tips here on that process. Next. One of our big roles in being involved in the rollout of the Performing Arts Equitable Payroll Fund is to make sure that every organization in the state who is potentially eligible is aware of this program. We have that goal for two reasons. The first is, of course, we know how much need there is in the state, and we want to make sure everyone knows so they have the opportunity to apply for the funds. The other reason that we want to make sure everyone knows is the opening of this fund and the response that we get to it is the beginning of our advocacy for more funds for it. At this point, there is one-time funding. This is a state program that is funded by a line item in the state budget, and there is only money for 1 year. But we want to be able to demonstrate to legislators by a very strong response the amount of need that there is. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on. But these are our 20 wonderful partners in crime that have been helping us spread the word, that have been co-hosting webinars, and helping be our voice in the community. One of the things that all of these organizations have done is co-host a webinar. This is the final webinar, but all of the previous webinars are available and recorded, and you'll get a link to that in addition to this. So if you know anyone that has missed out, you can certainly refer them to the website where they can see any of the past recordings. Next. And we'll go again next. So today our friends from the Santa Barbara County Office of Arts and Culture are our community partners of the day. This one is near and dear to my heart because I am based here in Santa Barbara. So this is my local arts office. And we have Hannah Rublikova with us today. Hannah, introduce yourself and tell us what you want about your office.
Yes, hello everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Hannah Rublikova with the Santa Barbara County Office of Arts and Culture. I'm thrilled to be here. We are the local arts agency representing Santa Barbara County. I saw some names I recognize in the chat, so it's great to have our local people here as well as those of you from outside of our area. We are here offering grants. We do some consultations. We're the state local partners, so helping people with the state California Arts Council grants. We're always happy to partner with California for the Arts. I would say that Terry is a wonderful resource in our county and is so knowledgeable on this stuff. We are happy to support and help, but she's definitely the person to go to with questions on this, although we'll do what we can. I will be ducking out of here early. So if you do have questions for me, they will be posting my email address in the chat later. So if those of you that are in Santa Barbara County, excuse me, feel free to reach out if you have any questions about our office or ways that we can support you. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Terry.
Excellent. Thank you. And thanks for being here and helping us spread the word for this final webinar. Next. Before we dive into the nitty-gritty, I like to take a moment to celebrate that we got here and to remind everybody that in fact advocacy does work. And it is the only reason this program is here today, uh, offering these funds, is because of the massive efforts of arts advocates from around the state, just like all of you, who sent emails and met with their legislators and came to events and came to Sacramento to meet with legislators to demonstrate the incredible need in the performing arts right now for additional funding, as we are all trying to navigate the new rules and laws around employment and the other changes that have been happening over the last several years. Okay, next. All right, so what is the Performing Arts Equitable Payroll Fund? The fund was created to support small nonprofit performing arts organizations with revenues under $2 million in hiring and retaining employees. The fund reimburses a portion of payroll costs on a quarterly basis. The program's goal is to restore resilience and build sustainability in the sector through an investment in creative jobs. It is administered by the Office of the Small Business Advocate, Cal OSBA, and it is managed by Californians for the Arts. This is an important thing to remember. These are not Californian for the Arts funds that are being distributed here. This is state money. This is your taxpayer dollars at work. The Cal OSBA is partnering with Californians for the Arts because they were wise enough to recognize the need to work with an industry-specific partner on this. It is certainly the first of its kind in the state. We believe it's the first program of its kind in the country. And so there are pieces that have to be figured out as we go. And they reached out to us because they knew our industry is unique and different, and they wanted there to be a bridge between the state and the industry to make this as smooth and easy a process as possible. Okay, the most important thing, the application portal opens on March 10th at 9 a.m. I was reminded in an earlier webinar that the day before that is daylight savings time. So make sure you get your clocks all aligned on Sunday so that Monday morning you are ready to go with the correct time. Applications will be reviewed in the order they are received. So that makes it important to go ahead and get yourself prepared, get your documents all ready to go so that on the morning of the 10th, you can get your application in as soon as possible. There are roughly $11.5 million in this fund. We absolutely believe there is a great deal more need than that. We believe that these funds will be expended. And so you don't want to wait for 3 or 4 months before you apply. You want to go ahead and get in the door as soon as you can. Next. All right, who can apply? Both 501c3 and fiscally sponsored organizations that meet the eligibility requirement can apply. For the fiscally sponsored, you do need to be operating under a Model C fiscal sponsor agreement, and you do have to have a formal signed agreement in order to apply. For the fiscally sponsored applications, it is the fiscal sponsor that is the actual grantee. They will complete the application. As we go through, you will see there are some documents that will be about the fiscal sponsor and some about the fiscally sponsored organization, and that will be clearly spelled out. Okay, next. So, in addition to being either of those type of organization, there are a list of specific eligibility criteria you have to meet. This is a grant that's very much about documents and information. There was not a lot of narrative. You will not be talking about the quality of your artistic expression. This is a grant that was established by a piece of legislation. This is not like a grant that is set up by your local foundation. There was legislation that was written. The requirements for the grant were spelled out in that legislation. That also means that in order to change anything in the legislation, in the grant requirements, it requires a second act of legislation. Okay, so what are those eligibility requirements? As we talked about, you have to be either a 501c3 or a Model C fiscally sponsored organization. You have to be producing or presenting performing arts that are open to the public. So if you only do private showings, you are not eligible. If you are only a school, you are not eligible. Your primary mission has to be producing or presenting performing arts that are open to the public. You also have to be hiring and paying workers as employees, not independent contractors. There are two pieces to this. Number one, all of the payment for this grant is in the form of reimbursement, and everything that is reimbursable is tied to employment expenses for W-2 employees. No expenses that you spend on independent contractors are eligible for reimbursement. Also, one of the requirements is that you have to be in compliance with California labor laws, including those around the classification of employees. There is a certificate of compliance that you're going to have to sign along with this grant, and there are a number of things that you will be certifying, but one of them is that you are in compliance with California labor laws. Another one is that you're in compliance with California sexual harassment training requirements. There's a link here, and you will be given that link to go to the state website and make sure you're educated about what those California sexual harassment training requirements are. It varies slightly depending upon the number of employees you have. There are also slightly different requirements for permanent employees as opposed to seasonal or temporary employees. So make sure you go to that website, figure out what the rules are for your specific organization, and make sure that you are in compliance. You will not be asked to upload all of your individual certificates from when people have done the training. You are required to keep those, and you are required to certify that you comply. All of these pieces of compliance, the state has the right to come back later and audit and request documents for. So you want to be sure that you are signing accurately and honestly, and that you keep the documentation, because you don't want the state to come back and potentially claw the money back from you. Two of the things that you are going to have to physically upload is you have to have a written DEI policy and a written anti-harassment policy. Those have to be in place by the time that you apply, and you will need the date when that was adopted by your board and the last time it was updated. This is a place that we immediately start to have some questions around the DEI policy. Remembering that this legislation was passed a couple of years ago, before the current kerfuffle on the federal level around DEI policies. But this is a requirement that is written into the statute, which, as I said, the only way to change this requirement is if we go back and change the law, which would mean shutting down the program until we can do that, potentially losing the funding, etc. So at this point, this is a requirement. The quality of your DEI statement is not going to be evaluated, but you do have to provide one in order to be eligible. And there is no anticipation that this will change. All right, you also have to have a mission statement, and you will share that within the application process. You have to be certified as being in good standing by the California Secretary of State. The link here is to go to the California Secretary of State website, where you will do two things. One, and instructions are included on how to do this. There is a certificate of status that you download. You get it immediately. It costs $5, and it certifies that you are in good standing with the Secretary of State's office. You also, while you're there, will want to download your most recent statement of information that should be on file, because that will tell both you and us who is a potential authorized signer for you. And we'll go over the authorized signers later. But so both of those things can be done at the Secretary of State. This is not the Registry for Charitable Trusts. This is the Secretary of State website. You also need to be able to provide 990s, or for those of you who file the 990N, which is the postcard that doesn't include any financial information, you will instead provide your form CTTR1 that is filed with the state. So you're going to be able to provide 990s and either a statement of activity or a profit and loss statement for your last 3 filed tax years. So this is not necessarily 2024, because for almost everyone, that's not due yet. So you need to have your last 3 filed tax years, and that can be from within the last 5 years. So you want 3 filed tax years since 2020. If, for example, in 2023, you had some special circumstances and you've had an extension, so you haven't filed 23, you can file 20, 21, and 22. And you're going to file your 990. You can do the public inspection version of that, which pulls out the privacy information that is included in Schedule B. We don't want you, giving us a lot of private information about your donors. Other than that, it is the full 990 that you will provide. And then you'll also provide that additional financial statement, either the statement of activity, profit and loss statement, whichever you use within your organization. You have to have an adjusted average annual revenue under $2 million. And we will go over how that average annual adjusted revenue is calculated. And finally, you have to not fall under the list of ineligible organizations. The statute lists a short group of specific organizations, types of organizations that are not eligible for this funding. Next, oh my God, she's so good. Those ineligible organizations are listed here. It's other types of fiscal sponsors. It's individuals who are fiscally sponsored and not an organization, social clubs, foundations. One of the ones that always causes some confusion is the nonprofit organization that raises money for a single arts organization. Now, if you raise money for your arts organization and no other, that's not a problem. This is about things like a booster club, where the club itself is not producing performing arts. The only thing the organization does is raise money for another organization. So there would be many levels upon which this type of organization would not be eligible. The big category here is youth performing arts organizations, which is not any statement against youth performing arts organizations, remembering that this is legislation that had to be passed to begin this program. And it is a brand new program. And when you go to legislators and ask them to designate money for specific programs, one of the things they want to know is the parameters and who all is going to be potentially getting this money to make sure it's something they can fund. And because the impetus behind this program was the impact on the performing arts of the passage of labor legislation like AB5. And so we were looking for funds to help support paying individuals as employees. And because youth organizations, though they certainly have employees, the large number of their performers are not paid employees. And so at the end of the day, they were not included. Our hope is that we have a hugely successful opening for this program, and the program goes extremely well, and we are able to go back and advocate not only for additional ongoing funding, but also to expand the parameters to include even more arts organizations in the fold. Okay, next. All right, here's our first pause, Beatrice. What do you and Ollie have to say for yourselves? Do we have any questions you want to go over?
Do not say his name again. He will appear.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think we have several fiscal sponsors in the audience, and they are always a lively group. One interesting question did come up that I'm just putting out there. I have referred, I believe, the lovely Susan Pleck to email us, but they have a very large capital campaign, and we'll have lots of documents from each donor saying that their contribution is earmarked and restricted to capital expenditures. And she is concerned about her ability to upload dozens of documents. This is more, everybody, this is more of an FYI for Terry, because she's going to have to get to work on this stuff. No.
Yes.
So I'm explaining that that is actually what's required, and that we'll ask her to email us so that we can work that out.
Yeah. And so that everybody does know, there are a lot of documents involved in this grant. There are a lot of documents, and we have tried to set up the application portal to make that as easy for you all as possible. I will tell you right now, if you have the ability to combine pages of PDF, some people have more PDF capability than others. But so if you have the ability to compress all of that into a single PDF, that's going to make your life easier. But if you don't, and we understand everyone doesn't, then we will have other ways for you to potentially upload those documents. But good for you, Susan. Number one, for preparing ahead so that you know, and flagging the potential concern. But yeah, so that it is a good opportunity to highlight for everyone. Everything you submit in terms of documents is going to be PDFs. There's lots of individual. There's not a place where you're going to upload everything. Questions are going to ask for specific documents, and you're going to upload them there. So making sure you have the ability to make PDFs, double checking your PDFs to make sure they're clear. These will be good things in the coming days. Anything else, Beatrice, before we move on?
Lots of questions about the size of documents. They're 10 megabytes each. So, that should be plenty when you're talking about PDFs. I think that we're good.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. We will also put, if you have specific questions about creating PDFs, compressing PDFs, some of those sorts of questions, the lovely and talented Sophie on our team might be able to help you with that. And so we will put Sophie's email into the chat, sophie@caforthearts.org, because if you are specifically concerned about your PDF capabilities, and also Sophie can help you with trouble with links and the forms. Okay, next. All right. So what is reimbursable, and how do we figure all of this out? As we talked about, this is all about reimbursements, and the percentage of reimbursement you will receive is based on Hannah, that's great to know. Hannah is also letting us know that she also can help the Santa Barbara County organizations with PDF capabilities. So that's fabulous. That is why your local arts organization is there. All right, Terry, quit looking at the chat. So the grant is structured, the program is structured so that the smallest organizations receive the largest percentage of reimbursement. Those organizations under $250,000 are eligible to receive 80% of their payroll expense reimbursement, capping out at the top. Organizations between $1.75 million and $2 million receive 20% reimbursement of their eligible payroll expenses. So this average annual revenue that we're going to calculate, what we're going to do is take your annual revenue off those three 990s, those three filed tax years. So you're not going to probably be looking at your 2024 revenue. You're going to be looking at the 3 years that you provide 990s for. These are, whether you're on calendar year or fiscal year, these years are the years represented by your 990. So, there are a couple of special categories of income that you are allowed to exclude because of the recognition that there are certain types of income that can inflate your annual revenue. And though they don't impact your immediate production budget, your immediate producing revenues, annual revenues, they can inflate you. And so you're allowed to eliminate them. There's a form that you're going to complete. The first category is revenue earmarked by the grantor or donor solely for capital expenditures. Remembering again that we have to follow everything by the letter of the law here. So you have to be able to document that the funds that you're looking at excluding were designated by the donor. So you're going to need that donor agreement, that donor letter, as we were just talking about. So that's the first category. The second category is pass-through funds that were collected for the benefit of another organization. For example, if you have organizations that you fiscally sponsor and you bring in funds, but those funds don't impact your operating budget, they go on to the fiscally sponsored organization. So that's another category. And finally, and the most confusing, funds received pursuant to Section 8753.6. These are special funds under the California Arts Council. These are not any of the general public funding programs through the California Arts Council. This is not talking about your organizational grant or your youth development grant or creative core or cultural district grant. None of those can be excluded. Those all should be included in your annual revenue that you report. These are specifically if you received funds from the Keep Art in Schools Fund or the Arts License Plate Fund. And the way this works is there's going to be a form and it's going to ask you the year of the first 990. It's going to ask you what the gross revenue is off of that 990. Then it's going to give you a place where do you have any capital funds that you want to include? Do you have any pass-through funds that you want to exclude? And do you have any funds pursuant to 8753.6 that you want to exclude? And you're going to do that 3 different rows, 1 per year related to the 990s that you have provided. The form is going to then do the math for you, and it will show you your annual adjusted gross revenue. You then can refer back to this handy dandy chart, and that will tell you your percentage of reimbursement once you get to the payroll expenses portion. Okay, deep breath, and on we go. Here's the handy dandy form. All right. And this form is available now. You're fine, so if you don't need to go back. This form is available now. You can download it. You do need to download it to your computer. You save it to your computer and then reopen it, and you can fill it in and save it on your computer to be all ready to go for Monday. Next. Okay, the way that the grant itself works is it covers a year with reimbursements for 4 quarters. 2 of those quarters already happened, and 2 of them are upcoming. So Q3 and Q4 of 2024 and Q1 and Q2 of 2025. Those are the quarters for which you can receive reimbursement for your eligible payroll expenses. The legislation is set up to have funds for a year, which is why we need to designate the full year. We also want to make sure that when we grant you an amount, that we have funds for that full amount. The amount of money we have available for this program for this year, we do not believe is sufficient funds to fund every organization in the state that might potentially be eligible. And so we needed a system where we could say to you, yes, you've been awarded this grant, and here's the amount that is earmarked for you. So we knew how many grants we could award, which is why you'll be doing some projecting in this application. All right, next. Right, what is reimbursable of these payroll expenses? So the first thing is employee wages. Again, no independent contractors. Anybody that you pay as a W-2 employee, those wages are eligible. Once your organization has been deemed to be eligible, all of your employees are then eligible. So if you happen to be a company who has a youth program, it's not your primary focus. Your public performances are your primary focus, but you have a youth program. If your organization is deemed eligible, then those people that work in the youth program, their wages are also. Administrative wages are eligible. The electrics guy, everybody that you pay as a W-2 employee, their wages are eligible for reimbursement. Your workers' comp expenses are eligible for reimbursement. These are the premium that you pay annually for your workers' comp. We'll talk a little bit more about how that's calculated because it gets complicated. Also, employer expenses for pension, retirement, health benefits, those kinds of things are reimbursable. And finally, your payroll or paymaster fees. If you're working with Paychex or ADP or a Paymaster or Gusto, those are all reimbursable. The things that are not reimbursable are payroll taxes and unemployment insurance. And this is both the portion of payroll taxes, both federal and state. The employer portion is not reimbursable, but also the employee portion is not reimbursable. And the reimbursements are calculated per quarter, and they are capped at $10,000 per employee per quarter. Again, there will be a handy dandy table. And for each line, you're going to fill in an employee. And we're going to go over all of this in more detail when it comes up later. But these are the types of expenses that you can be reimbursed for, remembering that the reimbursement cap is $10,000. But the portion of that your organization can actually be reimbursed for is based on that percentage tier we just talked about. So if you are in that smallest tier of under $250,000, then your percentage of reimbursement would be 80%. So you would be eligible per employee for 80% of $10,000. Okay, next. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about these payroll expenses. You're going to fill out tables as we talked about for the 4 separate quarters. Q3 and Q4 of 2024. These quarters that I'm going to talk about, these are all calendar year quarters. It does not matter if you are on a fiscal year. We are, for the payroll expenses portion, talking exclusively about calendar year quarters. So, again, these are all just your W-2 employees that you're thinking about, but you're going to have a table. And the first thing in this table is going to be the employee name. The second is going to be the hourly wage. The hourly wage is not part of the calculation in the formula. The hourly wage is because one of the requirements of the grant is that you are paying your employees at least minimum wage. And that has to be the prevailing minimum wage for your area. There is a minimum wage calculator that is provided, so you can go in and look up and put in your zip code, and it will tell you if your city or county has a higher minimum wage than the state minimum wage. When you're filling out the hourly wage, If you have employees, as many of us do, who get paid different wages for different work. In the performing arts, it's not at all uncommon for someone to be a performer one day and work in the box office the next day, or, be an electrician on another day. Also, sometimes you have one rate that you pay people for rehearsals and a different rate that they're paid for performance. So what you're going to do is you're going to look at each individual employee and say, what is the lowest hourly wage you paid this person in the quarter you are reporting? That's what you're going to enter here. Don't enter a range, anything like that. Look at what is the lowest hourly rate they ever make and enter that here. If you have people that are paid on a salary, calculate down what their hourly rate is. Okay, now we're going to start into the into the columns on this table that are going to help calculate the reimbursement. The first is your gross wages. This is the total wages paid to that employee in the quarter, and these are gross wages before anything has been withheld or taken out. The second column is going to ask about health and retirement pension employer expenses. So what did you pay for this particular employee for health and or retirement benefits during this quarter? Now, for some people, this is calculated and processed along with your payroll with your payroll company. For many people, it's two separate transactions. So you may have to be involving other paperwork in order to get these figures. The next column is, what did you spend per employee for processing payroll? What did you pay to Paychex or ADP or your Paymaster or Gusto per employee per quarter? Finally, what were your workers' comp expenses? This one is without a doubt the most complicated, because most of us, the way we pay workers' comp is you pay a premium up front to cover the year, and then there's usually an adjustment afterwards. So what you're going to do to calculate this is you're going to look at what you paid for a premium for the year covered by these 4 quarters. And you're going to probably have to do some calculations because you probably weren't charged for it based on a per employee basis. If you have that breakdown from your workers' comp person, great. Some paymasters charge you flatly per employee 5%. So for you, this is going to be very easy. For people where what you're paying is a premium, what you're going to do is you're going to take the amount you spent for that year, and you're going to divide that by quarters, and then you're going to divide it by employees. So you enter per employee that calculation. Then the last column, which when the formula is adding up, this column will be subtracted, is the total state and federal taxes withheld from each employee's wages. This is not the portion you contributed, because those aren't in this calculation. You as the employer. This is what is withheld specifically for these taxes. If there are other things withheld from your employees, like payments for health insurance, that kind of thing, that doesn't go in this column. This is just taxes that are withheld. And then the form will calculate up the total. If the total is more than $10,000, your form's going to show $10,000. Otherwise, it will add up the gross wages, the health column, the payroll processing column, the workers column, workers comp column. It will delete the taxes withheld column and give you a total there. That total that is reflected there, you would then receive your percentage amount of that total. Okay. Next. Before we go on to questions, so you're going to fill out 4 of those tables that I just described. The first 2 are your actual expenses for Q3 and Q4, and then you're going to fill out 2 tables for Q1 and Q2 of 2025. Those tables you're going to be projecting. You're not going to know specifically, and we understand that. You might not even know the name of the individuals. So in that form, you're going to fill out each column with maybe the name of the position as opposed to the person. And we'll talk about the projected a little bit more later. But there are the 4 that are done there. We also, and we'll cover this in a minute, for all of these, there's going to be documentation that you're providing. So before we get into all of that, Beatrice, what have we?
We have someone who would like us to talk about organizations that will be using this opportunity to hire their first ever staff member.
Okay.
And that is fine. You're going to need to project what you think your payroll expenses will be. And if you've never done it, that is a little bit more difficult. I would talk to people who have and do some research, figure out how much you're going to pay people, and then talk to folks maybe on what they've been paying. Terry, do you have any other suggestions?
No, this is a great time to consult your local arts council.
Yeah.
Whether you're in Santa Barbara, to reach out to Hannah, or in your county, every county has an arts council like this. The thing to remember about the projections is you're basically doing a not to exceed projection. So the amount that you provide as the projection is going to set a cap, and that's what the grant would be based on if you are awarded the grant. Then the amount you actually receive is going to be what you actually spend. Those actual reimbursements. So you're going to make this calculation and think about it, and then make sure if you err that you err slightly high as opposed to slightly low. We do ask that you don't go wildly high with your projections, because in the end, that you're not going to receive that money, but what it will do is lock up money that potentially could go to other grantees. The way this will work is, as we're approving grants, even once we get to the point where we think, okay, we've probably expended all the money, we're going to continue to award some more grants that will be on a wait list, or approve some more grants that will be on a wait list. You will know whether you're on the actual award or on the wait list. But the reason we're doing a wait list is so that those people who have projected, and if those projections, if the reality comes in less and there's leftover money, we want there to be people in line immediately to be able to use those funds. So the mere fact that you have not had employees in the past does not make you ineligible. You can apply. You're just going to have to do some research and figure out, you need to be hiring them either in the first quarter or the second quarter of this year, and what your expenses would be for them for those. And remember, you then have to actually do that hiring before you get the money. This is not a situation where you can say, I want to hire this person. I think it will cost me $20,000. Give me $20,000 and I'll go hire them. This is 100% done as a reimbursement. So once you've done those calculations, you then have to follow through and actually hire the person, expend the money, and then submit your reimbursement to be paid back. Next.
We're getting lots of questions around workers' comp and how to determine if you have seasonal employees, do you have to allocate to, their portion from when they actually were employed? Do we, if we have lots of workers' comp that actually pays for independent contractors, what do we do with that? I suggested that they can only get reimbursed for the workers' comp for employees, but it doesn't matter that then the figures won't match as long as what they are claiming reimbursement for does not exceed what they actually paid. That
Yeah.
was my answer, but
Yeah.
I would love
My
some
re-
elaboration.
yeah, my recommendation in that case, because yes, as we all know, you do have to pay in some cases workers' comp on independent contractors. When you are doing your calculations and you're saying, I paid $10,000 for workers' comp for the year, and then you divide that by quarters. In those quarters where you had both employees and independent contractors, include that number when you're doing your calculation. Or if you know specifically what portion went to the independent contractors, take that out before you do the calculation. Workers' comp, quite frankly, is one of the areas that fits very, very poorly into this. And you are absolutely going to have to do calculations, and the state recognizes that. You know, for many of us, we don't know exactly what we spent on workers' comp for a year after we've spent it because of the way audits and adjustments go. So what you're going to do is the other thing to remember is I had somebody ask this morning, should I put all of the workers' comp into the quarter in which I paid it? And the answer is no, because just because you pay your workers' comp, say in August, that's not when all of the workers work that it would be attributed to. So the best recommendation really is look at the full year. What did you spend on the year that was covered by these? And for some people, that may mean what you have to give us is 2 invoices. And you say, you know, this portion of this invoice and this portion. And then, you know, we're back in 3rd grade geometry. You're going to show your math. Include a note with your invoice that says, here is how I calculated my workers' comp expenses per employee. So that we can look at it and justify to the state, yes, what this person did makes sense. And it is attributed in such a way that this is a fair representation of what they spent on workers comp.
And sorry,
No, go ahead.
A comment Martha made me think that I may have gotten my words mixed up. I just want to make it clear. Documents are available for download and filling out, but not for upload prior to the opening of the application. So if I said to someone that they could upload documents before the application opens, that is not the case. I got my words mixed up. You can download them though and fill them all out and have them ready to go.
Yes, and we'll talk about in a few minutes that you can set up your portal, but there has been a lot of confusion about that, about people thinking they can upload their documents now. Okay, do you think we're ready to move on, Beatrice?
Yes.
Okay, so next. All right, so here's roughly what the process is going to be. As we've talked about, the application portal opens March 10th, 2025, 9 o'clock in the morning. You're going to submit your applications, and with that application, you're going to submit your documentation for Q3 and Q4 of 2024. Our team here at California Through the Arts will begin the review. We do not make the final determination. We are the beginning review. We might contact you at this point and say, hey, you gave us 2 of the same 990, or we can't read your tax determination letter. We've got this question because we're not really sure about this. So that process will go on. Once we have done the full review, we will make a recommendation. Yes, we think this should be funded. No, here's our concerns in terms of ineligibility. Goes on to the state. The state will make the final determination. They will come back to us and we will communicate to you either that you were declined and here is the reason that you were deemed to be ineligible, or, oh, happy day, you have been awarded a grant. Here's your grant agreement to sign and return. And then they will begin, once you've returned the grant, they will begin processing the payments. This is a state agency, which reads large bureaucracy, which is why it says here it will be 45 to 90 days after the grant agreement is returned before you will see checks. Think of this like dealing with the California Arts Council. This is not going to be fast money. So don't think that we're going to start having checks go out on March 15th. So recognize that this is going to take some time. Once, a couple of things to keep in mind here. Number one, you do want to be at the beginning of the line, not the back of the line. So get yourself ready so you can be applying sooner as opposed to later. Number two, when you are preparing your application, take as much care as possible to make sure your PDFs are legible. Make our life as easy as possible so we can move you along as quickly as possible. When the grants come in, they will be time-stamped as to when they are received. But if there is some big delay during the processing, you gave us the wrong document, or we couldn't read a document, or you didn't fully complete some of the information, and we have to reach out to you, then that will delay where your place in line is. So that says two things. Number one, it says prepare, make sure your information is good. Number two, and we'll talk about the contact process in a minute, but make sure you are watching your email and you respond as quickly as possible. This is not a situation where you want to say, oh yes, I need to rescan my VAT. I'll get to that in a couple of days. Because every day you wait, you're falling further back in line. You can't control the time that it takes things to move through bureaucracy. So therefore, you want to be as proactive as you possibly can on the portion you can control. Okay, so we get past the original approvals, and then at the end of Q1 of 2025, which means we're now talking about April of this year, for those organizations that have been approved, you will then have the opportunity to submit your actual numbers now for Q1 along with the documentation. Then the process will repeat. We will review those documents. They will go on to the state. The state will do the final approval and process checks. Then we move forward to July of this year when we come to the conclusion of Q2, and the process will repeat again for those who have already been awarded. And then at the very end, in the fall, you will complete a final report, which will be about how many jobs. It'll be numbers. They may ask for a success story, but this is again not going to be a big narrative report. This will be about numbers. Okay, next. This is written out, the steps that we just talked about. The things to remember being that the quarters are all calendar year quarters. And if I had a question from somebody this morning, I'm not going to have expenses until 2025, so I'm just going to wait and apply later. And I suggested, no, you want to go ahead and apply now, because if we get a huge response and all the grants are awarded, there won't be funds for later. So even if you think your expenses aren't going to be until 2025, you still want to go ahead and prepare your application and get it on in so that we can get some money earmarked in your name. Next. Okay, the actual application process and portal is a system called GoSmart. Let's go next. GoSmart is a system run by what used to be called WestStaff. They're now Creative West, which is a multi-state arts organization that does grants across states. And the first thing that you do is you're going to go to the portal. There's a link that will be provided, and set up your account. This step, the setting up of your account, you can do now. You do not have to wait till March 10th. I encourage you to do this now, to go set up your portal and get ready to go. There are tech tips. GoSmart has lots of great little tutorials and information to help you get things set up. The other things to know in terms of those of you who are fiscal sponsors, it is the fiscal sponsor that will set up the account, not the fiscally sponsored organization. The other thing to know is once you do start the application on the 10th, you do not have to complete it in one setting. If something happens, you can log out and come back. Also, there's a navigation bar on the side, and if you want to jump around, you don't have to complete the application in order. Okay, next, let's talk about setting up your grant portal. Okay, so you're going to go to the handy dandy GoSmart PAEPF portal. If you have used the GoSmart system before for other grants, you need to go specifically to our portal and you'll need to set up a new account. You cannot use your old account because that would be tied to another granting organization. You will log in and it's going to ask you, do you want to set up an individual or an organization account? And the answer is organization. This grant is not open to individuals. It's only open to organizations. So if you set up an individual account, when you come back to apply, you won't have access to the grant application. And if you set up one, you cannot edit and change it. So you would have to set up a new account. So make sure you set up an organization account. With this grant, you can have both a primary contact, the main person that we're interacting with, and an authorized signer. The authorized signer has to be someone listed on your current statement of information with the Secretary of State who is an officer of your organization. So they are legally allowed to sign documents on behalf of the organization. Those two people can be the same person. If your organization is structured such that the primary contact and is one of your authorized signers, great. Then you'll only need one person. If your authorized signers are, say, your board president and your board treasurer, and they have a tendency to travel and be gone for 6 or 8 weeks at a time, then you don't want that person to be your primary contact because you don't want us to be sending emails and that person isn't responding to their emails, isn't looking at their emails. So the account should be set up by the primary contact. It does not have to be set up by the authorized signer. When you set up the account, that's where you're going to provide the first batch of information. The information you provide here will be incorporated into your application. You will not have to repeat this information. But this is the list of information you're going to want to have at your disposal to set up your account. The legal name, your phone number, your address, your website, your 501c3 determination date, your tax ID number, the date the organization was formed in case that is different from when you got your 501c3 determination letter. When your 501c3 your 501c3 determination date, your fiscal year end date, your mission statement, and then again, because this is a portal that covers multiple states, your state legislative districts. So in California, this should actually say the state assembly district as opposed to the state senate as opposed to state house. There is a link here, and it will also be in the application portal, so you can look up your legislators. In terms of if your performance venue is one place and your office is somewhere else, you decide what districts best represent your organization. This is here because one of the first questions legislators ask when these programs are going on is who in my district is being impacted by this. So you want to decide what is the legislative district where you feel like you have the most presence and the most impact. For many organizations, this is going to be multiple districts. This is not a right or wrong answer. Pick the district that you feel best represents your organization, where you have the largest impact, where you want to be reported as being from. The answer that you give does not impact your eligibility, but you must answer. Do not, for example, put in zeros, because that will slow down your registration, because we'll have to contact you back and say, no, but really, what are your legislative districts? The same is true with your website. Don't put in what is not an actual website. If you don't have a website, what other online presence do you have? Do you have a Facebook page? Do you have an Instagram? But make sure that what you put in there is an actual working link to an online presence, because otherwise we'll have to contact you back and say, okay, no, but really, and that's going to delay the process. Okay. So this portion you can do today. You can do anytime before March 10th at 9 a.m. You do not have to wait. When you do this, you will not yet be uploading any of your documents. All of the document uploading and the vast majority of the information providing will happen on March 10th. You can gather all your documents. You can make some lovely folders on the computer where you will be applying from, but you cannot upload any of your actual documents yet. Next. All right. When you come back on March 10th, there will be two separate applications. 501c3 organizations will select one application. Fiscally sponsored organizations will select the other. Your fiscal sponsor will fill out the application. There will be some questions that refer to the fiscal sponsor and some that refer to the fiscally sponsored. If you, as a fiscal sponsor, also qualify for the eligibility requirements, you can complete an application for yourself as a 501c3 organization, and then you can submit up to 10 applications for fiscally sponsored organizations. Now, one of the questions we have had asked is, I've got 10, how can I decide which one to do? If you want, and you have the staffing, and say you've got 10 different organizations, you can have people on your staff designated to set up 10 different accounts. You're going to have different emails for each one of those fiscal sponsored applications, so that way they can be referred, they can be being worked on simultaneously. Yes? Okay. Okay, on I go. All right, so next. Sorry, there was a knock at my door. All right, so the first chunk of information, once you're in the actual application, is informational. We're not to documents yet. One of the things to remember is there are some pieces of information, not unlike your county districts, where the information, you must provide the information you provide does not impact your eligibility. This is true for something like the county, the primary performance venue size. You have to answer it. People with big venues aren't going to be deemed better than small venues. It's just information that we have to collect. This is also where you're going to enter your authorized signer. Now, if this is the same person as your primary contact, that's totally fine. If not, this is the opportunity to enter the second person. In the program guidelines, every single question is going to be covered. We're not going to go through every single question here today, but I do want you to know, when you go into the program guideline, there's one that goes step by step through every single question for a 501c3, and there's a separate section in the guideline that goes through every single question step by step for fiscally sponsored. I very strongly encourage you to download the guidelines, to treat this like a study guide. Go through now and put together every piece of information and every document. All right. Next. Yes, Beatrice.
This just came up. Is this application going to require any of the identification verification processes like Lendistry required? I don't believe so,
No.
right?
No.
And I apologize. I need to shut my mute because dog.
No, and we're not hearing it at all. No, you're all good. No, you will not have to look into your camera. It does not, the application itself does not have to be completed by your authorized signer. The authorized signer has to sign the certificate of compliance, but it does not, this process, you are not going to be connecting to your bank account like you did with those previous grants. Okay, next. So after information, the next thing is your first set of organizational documents that we talked about before. This is where you're going to upload each of these documents. One of the things that I do encourage you is if there's something weird about one of your documents that you are concerned is going to cause confusion, put a note in with the PDF for that document. You know, it so happens that the name of our organization is Susie's School for Ballet, but we stopped teaching ballet years ago. We are now only a performance. We've just never changed our legal name. You can do that with your individual documents. Also, the very last question on the application is there anything else you want us to know? This is also a good place where you can put in these kinds of notes, qualifications, concerns you might have about how you are being interpreted. Okay. So this is the list of organizational documents you're going to upload. And we've been over this, so I want to move on. We're kind of behind. So next. All right. Once you have established that you're eligible as an organization, now you're going to provide documents to establish that you are in fact producing and or presenting performing arts that are available and open to the public. And the way you're going to do this is, and I apologize up front, there are lots of threes in this. You're going to select 3 productions that have taken place since 2000 in the last 5 years. And you're going to submit 3 documents for each of those 3 productions. The documents will each be separate documents in their own PDF. They all should be submitted as PDFs, and they all should be under 10 megabytes. There are a list of 6 types of documents that you can provide, and you pick 3 for each show. It doesn't matter which 3. It just matters that you pick 3 for each production. Your 3 productions need to be from 3 different years. So for example, an organization could say in 2021, we produced Angels in America. And the 3 different documents I want to provide are a box office report, evidence of paid advertisement, and a review. With these, you do not have to provide 10 box office reports. You don't have to provide 10 reviews. 1 each of each type of document. It does have to be 3 different documents. You can't provide 3 box office reports for Angels in America, for example. Then you're going to go to a separate year. They didn't produce anything in 2022. So they went to 2023 and they selected their production of The Shot. And they provide evidence of paid advertisement, a copy of a review, and the playbill. Playbill, program, whatever you want to call it. And you do in this case need to provide your full program, not just the cover. And this should be a PDF, not a link. Even if it's a digital program, if you can just create a PDF of it. Finally, in 2024, they produced Helvetica, and those are the 3 documents. Again, you are ultimately going to provide 9 separate PDFs, 3 per show, and the shows are going to be 1 per year. Next. All right. This is, again, the income section, which we've really talked about. The thing to remember is, in addition to putting the numbers in the form for each of the years, any of those exclusion funds that you include, you will have to include the documentation for those. So you'll have to include, the letter from the donor or the grant agreement with the fiscal sponsor agreement if you have pass-through funds like that. Next. All right. And again, this is the payroll expenses. And we've talked about the first two that you're going to do are your actual expenses. One for Q3, you're going to have one table, and then you're going to have Q4 on another table. These forms are available for download now. You have to download it to your computer, fill it out, and then save it, and you will upload it during the application. The form is set up to take 30 employees. If you have 60, 80, 200 in a quarter, you're just going to keep filling out additional copies of the form till you cover all of your eligible employees. And then in the application, it's going to say to you, you're going to upload, and then it's going to pop up and say, do you have another form you need to upload? You're going to upload that one, and it will keep doing that until 10. So if you have more than 300 employees that you think you're going to submit in a quarter, contact us beforehand, and we'll let you know. We're kind of hoping that even with big orchestras, that if you know that you're going to have more than 300 employees in one of the quarters, shoot us an email and we'll help you take care of that. Okay, we've talked about this form, so let's go on to the next. Okay, so for the projected expenses, as we talked about, now you're going to be looking to Q1 and Q2 of this year. So Q1, you know some of, but you might not know all of the performers or all of the workers for everything in 2025 through the end of June. That's okay. You still need to break them down by individual position because the max on the reimbursement is based on per employee. It's 10,000 per employee. So if you lump all of your electricians together into one line, then you're 10,000 for the quarter for all of your electricians. So you want to go with each different person and or position having their own row. And you're going to do one of these for Q1 and one of these for Q2. Right now, for those projected quarters, you're only giving us the numbers so we can set the maximum amount for your budget. You are not yet giving us the documentation. Next. Now said documentation. For everything that you're providing, we need some sort of verification of those numbers. The state needs to know you aren't just making this up. So, and there are lists here, and there's lists in the guide. The list is to give you different choices because some people process payroll through payroll services and other process through paymasters and others do their own payroll through QuickBooks or Gusto. Different people have access to different documents. You don't have to provide everything in these lists. You have to provide something. And this is a list of potential things. For example, to show your wages, if you have the quarterly statement that has to be sent to the state EDD, the DE9C, I'm not thinking of the correct name, but it's the quarterly contribution return that lists the name of the employee, the gross wages, and the taxes withheld. That's the easiest. If you have that, submit that for your wages, and you don't need a report from your payroll service. You also, alternatively, if you have a list from your payroll service that lists the same thing, that's great. You don't need both. On all of this information, please redact the Social Security numbers of your employees to protect their privacy. State doesn't want the information, and you don't want to be sharing that. Keep that documentation. The state has the right on a case-by-case basis to come back and say, we want to see your documentation complete with Social Security numbers. But you are welcome to redact that, or if your payroll report has just the last 4 digits, to provide that as opposed to including that. We've talked about calculating for the workers' comp. We've talked about calculating for these other things. It says invoices, and it also says proof of payment. You do not have to, the better is the invoice. If you for some reason don't have an invoice, like some people use QuickBooks and they use a payroll service through QuickBooks or Intuit, and it's just set up on automatic deposit, and so they don't feel like they have an invoice that shows what they pay for a year. In that case, if the only thing you have is proof of payment, that's fine. But what we really want is the invoice that shows what you're paying for the year. And again, if you need to do calculations, because these are not broken down by employee, that's fine. In that document with your invoice, include the calculations of what you did. I know the workers' comp one in particular is causing people a lot of confusion and a lot of trouble. Make your best sense case. There is no exact way that we can tell everyone to do this that will work for everybody, because how workers' comp is calculated is so different. Next. Okay, Beatrice, you look like you have questions.
No. Lots of questions about fiscal sponsors again. And I did have the one question that I actually find confusing, because the application is one that in some cases in the portal we inherited, and it talks about the date of 501c3 incorporation. And the question is that the date of your incorporation as a corporation, or is it the date of your 501c3 determination? And I believe both things are asked in the application. I'm so sorry to overshare, but with a 115-pound German Shepherd losing his mind, I have lost the answer in my brain. So please
yes, and
help these people.
the 501c3 incorporation date, that is your determination date from the IRS. If you incorporated first and then you got your determination, then your incorporation date goes under when your organization was formed. Again, as long as you provide those dates, and as long as it's more than 3 years and you have the 3 years of documentation, if you put down under organization formed your IRS date and you put down your articles of incorporation in that, it's not going to matter. That's you have to provide the date. What the date is, other than that it's at least 3 years ago, isn't going to impact your eligibility. So don't stress over that. What else you got?
That's it for right now.
Okay.
Mary, I have a question. I was answering for a moment for Beatrice when she was dealing with her dog,
okay.
and I may have said something incorrect. Someone asked whether they could choose not to get reimbursement for their workers' comp and just enter zero. And I said, I didn't see why
yes.
not. But if in
yes.
fact, would Cal OSBA look at that as this organization did not actually provide workers' comp? Okay, thank you.
No, you're not going to be punished if you don't want money for something. If it's too complicated, or you feel like it's not enough money to be worthwhile, or because there may be some cases where your employees max out at 10%. I mean, at 10,000. So no, if you choose to not calculate your workers' comp, if you choose to not calculate your health benefits or anything, that's fine. Nobody's going to look askance at you. That's totally fine.
And the one of the reasons it's fine is because you still have to certify that you're in compliance, yes. Which means that you are covering people with workers' comp.
Yes, because legally you are obligated, including anybody that you're paying as an independent contractor, because there are legal ways to pay independent contractors. But if you're paying independent contractors, unless you have their certification, then you also need to be covering them.
And I think I need to clarify one more thing. The question did come up very late in the presentation about, can you get reimbursed for independent contractors, which surprised me. No, you cannot. And furthermore, you have to certify that you are in compliance with California labor laws, which include, folks, AB5. If you haven't heard of this, There is a webinar that we have a link to that Martha can put in the chat. It was presented by Californians for the Arts earlier, and it talks about the requirements of AB5 in the arts. But one of the big reasons for the existence of this particular fund is to help companies, organizations comply with the added costs of AB5. And it's required that you have to be in compliance with that law, which requires most arts workers to be hired as employees in order to be eligible. So please do look at that. Talk to your labor lawyer, talk to your HR folks, and maybe in your payroll company who can help you, and other organizations who are there to help you. We can't give you those answers as to what the law is, but I can tell you that it applies and that you need to be careful about that.
Okay, are you ready for us to move on? Okay, next. All right. There are a lot of questions at the end, excuse me, of the application that again fall into that category of you have to answer them in order to be eligible, but how you answer is not going to impact your eligibility. This includes a lot of demographic questions because we have to have that information to report to the state. There are also some very specific questions asked in the statute that dictates that we have to gather, like the percentage of your budget spent on payroll expenses and the number of jobs created. None of that information will impact your eligibility. You're not more likely to be awarded if you say you're going to add 57 jobs. They are data collection only. That being said, you do have to answer them. They are not all included in this deck. They are included in the program guidelines. Some of them are numbers related, so get the guidelines, gather the information before, so you're not having to look at Monday morning how many employees you had in 2023. Okay, next. Okay, the certificate of compliance. As Beatrice has mentioned, as I have mentioned, there are a number of items that you are going to attest to. You're going to say that you're in compliance with sexual harassment training. You're going to say that you're in compliance with the California labor laws. This certificate, this is the thing that has to be filled out, signed and initialed by your authorized signer. This can be done now. You can download it, complete it, and have it waiting on your computer to upload. All of the things in this that your authorized signer, and remember that authorized signer must be listed on your statement of information on file with the Secretary of State. This is a legal document they are signing. Take these attestations seriously. The documentation behind them, though you do not have to submit, the state has the right to come to you later and say, okay, we're going to do an audit of your grant. We do want to see this paperwork. And if they deem that you have not been honest, then they will take the funds back. So please take this seriously. Next. Yay, we're at the end of the application. You've done it. You've submitted. You will get an email that says, yay, you submitted your grant. This just means you submitted. This is not an email telling you that you have been awarded. But if you do not get this email telling you you submitted your grant, go back in, make sure it's showing as submitted. If you still don't have the email, send us an email and say, hey, I just submitted my grant, but I didn't get a confirmation. Don't wait 3 weeks. If you don't have an email confirmation within 10 minutes, shoot us an email and say, I'm a little concerned, because it may indicate that there was a problem with the grant being submitted. It may indicate that there's a problem with our emails getting to you, and we want to sort all of that out in the immediate. The timestamp on your grant for where it is in line is going to be based on that confirmation email. So please pay attention. make sure you get the email. And if you don't, get back to us immediately. Okay, so we're going to get all the applications in. We're going to start reviewing them. It's going to be a little while before we get back to you. In the first 2 weeks, no news is good news. Because if we're contacting you immediately, it means we've come up probably with a problem, because we have to review the applications, then they go on to the state, and then you'll start to get word. Okay, next. I know we're running a little long. I'm sorry. For those of you that need to leave right on time, you will get the full recording. You will get the copy of the Q&A and everything. We will go ahead and finish and hang and do any questions. But if you have to leave, don't worry, you'll get all the information. And I'm sorry that we got behind and ran a little long today. Resources. We have tried to give you as many resources to help you prepare so that you're ready on March 10th as we possibly can. Next. All right. What are the things that you can be doing now? Number one, I cannot stress strongly enough to review the full document of the program guidelines, go step by step through the application, and get all of your information together now. Ask for help. Email us at PAEPF@CA for the Arts. Go set up your account portal. If you're having questions or problems with the forms themselves, downloading the forms to complete, if you get the payroll documentation and you're having trouble completing the forms, then emails the forms themselves, links, email directly to Sophie. Sophie at CA for the Arts. Martha will put her in the chat. If you're having trouble setting up your portal, and I will tell you today, and I don't know if this is impacting the front-facing portion of the portal, we this morning before this started, were having some trouble on the back end of the portal because of an update that they had just done. If you go to log in and try to set up your account and there is an issue, please let us know. But we think that it should be resolved. And if you clear your cache and reset the browser, you should be fine. And it may not be impacting the front-facing portion of the portal at all. I just don't want people panicking. If you are having any issues with the portal, trying to set up your account and you can't find the link, you can't find the portal, for that, I would email Allison at CA for the Arts. She is functioning right now as our portal expert. General questions about eligibility, questions about the program itself, those send to PAEPF. As you can imagine, we're getting a lot of emails, and I'm assuming between now and Monday morning, that's only going to increase, which is why we're trying to kind of divvy it up a little. If you are trying to get an answer, the other two emails that you can use is Beatrice at CA for the Arts or Terry at CA for the Arts. Martha is the main manner of the PAEPF, but you now have all of them. We are trying very hard to stay on top of all emails. But if you're panicking and freaking out, you now have 5 different ones you can try. Go set up your portal, gather your documents, make sure that your authorized signatory is on your statement of information. Download both the certificate and the statement of information. Next. Okay, this is just the link to where there's stuff about the GoSmart portal. Next. These are instructions on how to navigate the Secretary of State website. You look yourself up first with your legal name of your organization. Then you're going to open up a search. Now, you'll see the bottom arrow where it says View History. You open that up. That's where you can find and download your statement of information. Up at the top where it says Request Certificate, that's where you're going to request a copy of the certificate. It has to be dated since February 1st. And you request it. It's going to cost you $5, and they will send it to you immediately. When you go to look for the date, it's a little confusing because it's in the date of the signature block where that is issued. That's where the date of the certificate is. Now, the Secretary of State website is public and anyone can do the search. Anyone can also view your statement of information. To request the certificate, you have to be signed in as your business's account. So don't wait until Monday morning because that's the one place that people have had some glitches. You have to make sure that you are on the correct account or potentially set yourself up an account. It's not hard to do, but you don't want to be doing this stuff Monday morning. Next. All right, make sure, I cannot say strongly enough that the primary signer, the email you use to set up this account is an email that is actively monitored. If something strange happens and you have a person as the primary contact set this all up, and then a week from now they quit, make sure that this is still an email that is monitored. This is where we're going to communicate with you. On every one of these relief grants, I ended up working with someone who's like, oh, yeah, now that person left, right after they did the application and we haven't checked that email in 6 weeks. Don't be that person because you're going to fall back in line. Next. Ask for help. We've talked through all of the emails, but reach out. We are here to help you. I do very strongly encourage when you have questions, when you have confusion, to submit them by email and don't try to call. 2 reasons. One, we're going to get back to you a whole lot faster because we can do it any time of the day or night. But also, if we respond to you in an email, you have a record. You have the actual information. You don't have to worry about your note-taking capabilities during the call. You don't have to worry if you're remembering correctly. If we're sending you instructions of what to do, you have a written copy there. Next. All right. I would be very remiss if I did not encourage you to consider membership in both or either Californians for the Arts and California Arts Advocates. We are a membership organization, and this is how we survive, is through the funds raised through membership. Next. We have 2 events coming up in April. Because we are over, I'm going to concentrate most on Arts Advocacy Day. I do encourage you to look into the summit. These events are both in Sacramento later this month. Arts Advocacy Day is a free event. We gather as a group in Sacramento, in Capitol Park. We start with a rally. We usually have some legislators speak, some performers. And then as a group, we go off to meetings with legislators. We pair people from specific districts and we schedule meetings and they go to their legislator. And if you've never done a legislative meeting, it's a great education. It demystifies the process. You're given talking points. You're there with friends. And from the legislator standpoint, the impact of having a group of 10 to 15 people from your district come and tell you or one of your staffers, here is how arts funding impacts your district. Assemblymember Hart or Senator Lamone, this is what the impact is in your district. The impact is immeasurable. Sorry, I'm suddenly very dry. The pictures that we showed at the beginning of people standing there with signs, that was on Arts Advocacy Day, where we have championed this cause for years, and we ask you and encourage you to come join us or meet with your legislator in your direct district. Next. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for advocacy to help make this program possible. I do have one more request, and that is any organization that you know of that could potentially be eligible, let them know, spread the word, point them towards the resources. The previous grant opportunities, the relief grants that came out during COVID, were lifelines and were incredibly important. Unfortunately, pretty much every one of the programs that was available for the arts ended up being undersubscribed. So there was more money than grants were submitted. There was leftover funds. And what this has done is created the impression for many legislators that the arts don't have as much need as they say. And this makes it extremely challenging when we go to champion for projects like this. What we want is we want this to land with a huge splash, with a ton of applications, and to be fully subscribed almost immediately, and to have a big long and have a long wait list, because there is no more powerful message we can take back to the legislator about the ongoing need for this, to make this a permanent program, to make funding for the arts available, than to have your actual applications, to have actual numbers of, you want to know how many organizations there are out there that need these funds? This is the number we can tell you. So that is my plea. Prepare, get your stuff ready, tell your friends, tell your colleagues, tell your friendly enemies. You're helping them, and you're also helping yourself. So, Beatrice, is there anything?
I'm just going to add, there's always organizations that are like, are we eligible? I can't tell you that for sure. And nobody will be able to do that until you apply, but take the chance, right? The no is the status quo. Look for your yes, and we want you to apply. It's documents, but you know what? It could be hours and hours of narrative instead, and that's not a thing. So that's good. Apply, 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 and hopefully you will get some help.
Martha, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I love all the things you've said. There, I would just be repeating them, but what they said.
Okay. Fabulous. I do apologize that we ran long today. I feel as though we were a little out. We did a lot of these at the beginning of the month, and then there was a week gap between last Tuesday and today, and I feel like I slowed down. So I hope the information was helpful. Please follow up with questions. We will follow up with resources. If you have questions, between now and Monday morning, if you have questions, we will all be at the ready on Monday. Reach out to those emails. We want to help you. As Beatrice said, I know there's a lot of documents, but if these funds come through for you, that will also be a lot of help. So good luck. Prepare yourself. Thank you. And I look very, very forward to a flood of wonderful emails down the line of success stories.